Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Weatherman, we can't allow any further delay. So stop your waiting.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Fox 12 Weather Podcast. Today is Thursday, May 23rd. I'm meteorologist Jeff Orgeron, joined by Chief Meteorologist Mark Nelson. Hey Mark.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Good.
Just us.
The guys today.
Just the guys.
We're gonna let the ladies take a break here. Camilla and Katie. Katie is actually off today, so she's on her weekend. But I think you're working with Camilla later on.
Maybe it was a last minute thing too. Actually, let's be honest, folks. When Jeff texted me as soon as I woke up and he said podcast at 9:30, and I thought it had a question mark on it, but I was thinking, we'll get to it tomorrow maybe. But thank God Jeff put everything together so I could just stumble out of bed, grab my coffee, come in here. I did brush my teeth.
That's good.
Then it's nice. I appreciate you putting all this together. So this is going to be an action-packed two-guy podcast.
It sure is. And we already know you know the forecast like the back of your
Actually,
hand,
I don't. I had yesterday off, so I feel a little out of touch. I've only looked at, some Euro.
Why were you off?
We had an AMS. That's the American. That's something we should share, actually. American Meteorological Society. There's a national AMS. Okay. We are both members. And then there is an Oregon chapter of the AMS. And we're the largest non-student chapter in the USA, actually, because we have a lot of people. We typically have 30 or 40 people at each meeting. We just had one at Stark Street Pizza. They're not paying me to say that, but I do have 2 leftover slices for lunch today at work.
Nice.
But we had a meeting there. Charles, I forget his last name, gave a great talk about the Columbia River Estuary with the CRITFIC folks, the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. And we have a big meeting you must go to. If you're a weather geek, you must go to the OMSI meeting each fall in October. Jeff, you've been there.
I love it.
It's just basically people's ideas of what might happen during the upcoming winter. But anyway, that's the local Weather Geeks hangout. Basically, it was our, what do they call it, a hype house? It was like our hype house last night. Do you know that term, Jeff?
Kind of.
I'm so young and cool. I don't even know exactly what it means, but I just wanted to say a hype house. It means like an idea, the high-tech people, the bros getting together. I guess,
so,
I don't know.
For those that are, unfamiliar with the AMS local chapter, can anybody join, Mark?
Oh, yeah. And it's only, is it $10 a year or $7 a year? Yeah, it's very cheap to join.
10. Yeah.
Yep. And you can just look Oregon AMS, Google it, you'll find our webpage.
And if you're, somebody that likes to see the weather maps, a little bit more info than just the 7-day forecast, I do think that fall meeting is super fun and could be interesting for you. Again,
hardcore.
You have like a handful of meteorologists, local meteorologists that take a stab at the winter forecast. They try to guess, or they base it off of more than just a guess. They look at computer observations or long range outlooks, things like that, El Nino, La Nina phases, and try to take a stab at what how much snow we might get in the metro area or how many winter weather events we'll have. So it is a lot of fun, and you should definitely consider joining if you're into weather.
I was just going to say this year is, I'm going to give you the date right now. Go to the website. I think it's this doesn't help that I'm giving you the date and I'm not sure which date it is. It's either the 19th or the 26th, that Saturday.
Of
Oregon AMS.
September
Google.
or October?
October. Did I say September? October.
As we get closer to that day, we'll remind everybody that tunes into the podcast.
Right.
I mean, if you like our podcast, you'll really enjoy going to that, and then you can interact with all the local weather nerds like us.
It's quite an, shall we say, an eclectic group.
It is.
Interesting folks.
No
wide variety, wide cross-section of America comes to that meeting.
Yep. Okay, so what is on tap for the podcast today? Well, we've been dealing with some wet weather the past couple of days, unusually cool weather for late May. Yeah, it's been kind of brutal, especially considering the warm weather we had in the middle of the month. So we'll recap how much rain we saw. Got a cool view up on the mountain as well. And then we did get a couple of reports of hail. Some of the heavier showers produced some small hail. So we'll talk about how hail forms if you're not familiar with that. We're going to talk about the holiday weekend that's coming up and what the weather is shaping up to look like. Long range outlook, maybe as we wrap up the month of May and we head into June, what may be happening around here, this part of the Pacific Northwest. And then we'll, of course, finish up the podcast with some viewer photos. We always appreciate you sending those in via one of our apps or the website. So let's get right into it, shall we? this was the view this morning, Mark.
Winter.
Timberline.
Timberline.
Yeah.
Winter is never far away at 6,000 feet in the Pacific Northwest.
That's a fact. Another 6 inches of snow accumulated over the past 24 to 36 hours. Looks like it's going to be a bluebird day up there. And I have a feeling that Bonnie Silkman may be up there later on, or maybe in the next couple of days. She tends to, it's crazy. She'll wrap up GDO, Good Day Oregon, and then she'll head up to the mountain and then come back down, and then she's back on the morning show the next day like nothing ever happened.
These young kids, they don't really need much sleep, apparently. I remember those days.
I know. Okay, I took your advice, Mark. You know how I showed rainfall totals, I think, a week or two ago, and the numbers were really, really small? I enlarged them a little bit.
Ooh, a larger font. We like that.
Yeah.
Well, if you're watching a podcast, some people probably watch this on their phone. All the young kids, they love like sitting there looking at a teeny tiny screen. So this helps you a little bit. Look at those sideways. Totals. Ugh.
Yeah. We saw some pretty impressive rainfall Tuesday. This was an overachiever. Let's admit it. We were not expecting some of these rainfall totals, especially East Metro, near the Cascade foothills. I mean, it tends to be wetter in those areas, of course, but 1 to 2.5 inches of precipitation over that 48-hour span is pretty impressive.
I'm out in the Cascade foothills, west end of the gorge. I just looked 1.6 inches out of those 2 days. So wet. The one day was 1.1 something inches. And it stayed, I don't think I got above 50 the last 2 days. When people say, you didn't plant your warm weather stuff yet, that's why you don't do that up here. I mean, corn, beans, none of that would even grow. It would just rot if you planted it this early in the season.
Tuesday afternoon, I was looking at the radar, and I was like, man, east of I-5, it is coming down. I was thinking about you. I was like, man, it's probably a soaker over at Mark's house.
In fact, Jeff, I came into the meeting yesterday evening. The AMS meeting was on the east side, like I said, near I-205. Came in, it's like, a sunbreak. The roads are all dry. It was great. We were talking to the parking lot afterwards, right after sunset. Still pretty bright. And I drive back. I hit Troutdale's the first spot on the way home where it's like, the side of the road is wet. And by the time I got home, it was drizzling lightly again, like it never stopped. Out of the rainforest and then back in.
It was, I mean, and what was interesting too,
look at the west side.
Rainfall event was definitely more favorable along in the east of I-5 and certainly in the higher elevations. But look at down to the south. I think in that 2-day span, Salem, McNary Field only saw 0.08 of an inch of rain versus the half inch that fell in Portland.
That's pretty typical, like late spring, early summer, because that's when I complain the most about being in the foothills. Kind of the last gasp of the orographic. Have we used the word orographic yet?
We have, yeah.
Okay,
we can
orographic.
Review.
No, I mean today.
Oh, not today. No, we have not.
Which means influenced by mountains, so clearly westerly flow. Well modeled, by the way. Models were very clear it was going to be east of I-5 mainly, or the most precipitation. So I think models did really well with that.
Yeah, so that was a wet one. And we're actually doing fairly well this month. We had that 11-day stretch where we didn't have any measurable rain. That was May 7th to May 17th. But we've been recovering since then. And, in a typical May mark, we end up with about 2.5 inches of rain in Portland. Obviously, it depends on where you live in the metro area.
Right,
very
of course.
But we've already seen over 2.25 inches of rain. So we're on our way to a normal May. We're
pretty typical. I bet it'll be pretty typical in the end.
I think
near average.
So that's that's good to see. The last thing we want to see is a very dry May, which we've had. 2021 was an example of that. And temperature-wise, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. We talked about this last week. Start of the month, cool and wet. Then we had some heat middle of the month. And now we've settled back into the cooler, wetter pattern.
Which brings us back to average.
Right. Near normal. Yeah, that's right.
Near normal.
So if you're just listening to the podcast, we're showing how the temperatures have played out in the month of May so far. And the coolest temperature, high temperature was, we had a couple of days, May 4th and May 5th. High temperatures of 55 degrees, and the warmest days so far have been in the low 90s. That was May 10th and May 11th, 91 and 90 respectively. So, nothing too unusual so far in the month of May. But we did get a couple of viewer photos, which, in springtime, you get hail showers, not unusual. I figured this was a good opportunity to maybe explain how hail forms.
You can never go wrong giving an explainer for hail.
Yeah.
Look at that.
this was a picture that we got in. We don't tend to get a lot of viewer photos in from Eastern Oregon, but this one came in from Cove, which is just east of LeGrand.
Pretty spot. Jeff, have you been there? Cove?
I have not.
You need to go to Cove. It's just a pretty spot. There's no like big town there. It's east. It's on the other side of the Grand Ronde Valley from LeGrand. So they're in Cove. It's interesting because most of the area there, the homes, the land gradually tilts upward to the east up against the Wallowa Mountains. So almost everybody has a view looking west. You know, because it kind of steps down. So you're looking out across the flat Grand Ronde Valley. When thunderstorms come across in the summertime from left to right, from south to north, always really pretty to see the lightning flashing.
Okay. And probably some good sunsets, considering a lot of them are looking.
But no sunrise. It's behind you in the mountain.
So Bruce sent this photo in. Clearly there was some hail that was falling Wednesday afternoon, yesterday afternoon, as we were this podcast. Doesn't look like it was super large hail. And we don't tend to see very large hail in the Pacific Northwest. You really need tall thunderstorms, really strong and severe thunderstorms to lead to big hail forming. And let's talk about how that does end up happening. So, you know, I think a common misconception, Mark, is hail is typical in cold weather.
Maybe for us, because it does tend to happen more often in cool weather.
Fair enough. But like, you know, for instance, you know, I covered weather for a couple of years in the Southern Plains, and they can get massive hail events, or they can get hail that can be, you know, inches deep, and it can look like snow is on the ground, right? But that tends to happen in the warmer months of the year, because you really need that warm air at the surface to create these strong updrafts. So if you're watching the podcast as opposed to listening to it, this is an image that kind of depicts how a thunderstorm or a strong shower would form, what is going on inside that cumulonimbus cloud, that really tall cloud. So if you have a thunderstorm that's forming, you tend to see unstable air. Unstable air, basically warmer air below, cooler air aloft. That creates rising air, more buoyant air, and that can create these strong updrafts. And what that does is it takes a raindrop and it causes it to rise inside the cloud. And as soon as that raindrop climbs above the freezing level, obviously it freezes. And when it gets to a certain weight, it starts to fall back down again. So, but then all of a sudden the updraft can bring it up again. And there's this cycle that occurs where the raindrop or the piece of ice goes up and down and up and down, and more liquid, the term, I guess, is accretion.
Right.
Accretes on the ice. And so it can grow, and it gets to a certain point where it's just too heavy for the updraft to carry it back up again, and it falls down to the ground, and that's your hailstone.
So the stronger the updraft, the larger your hail is going to be. And there you go. Look at that. That's a great graphic. I love that one. Yeah,
it is. So, yeah, Mark is exactly correct. So the stronger the vertical wind or the updraft, the larger the hail can grow. The longer the thunderstorm can hold that hailstone within it before it actually falls down to the surface. So we tend to see more like pea to marble size hail in the Pacific Northwest because our updrafts don't tend to be as strong as, say, Texas or Oklahoma, where this time of year you can easily get updrafts, 40, 60, even 80 plus mile per hour.
Wow.
I know.
To get a grapefruit to move upward, you've got to have a 98 mile per hour wind.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Can you imagine just a vertical wind going at that speed?
Just going that fast up into a storm, being pulled up. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
like
we don't.
Machine. It's just sucking the air in.
You don't want grapefruit size hail either passing over you, or you don't want those kinds of updrafts near you because, it's bad.
Well, in fact,
big hail.
You may have heard us talk about like a severe thunderstorm.
Mm-hmm.
What is considered a severe thunderstorm in terms of hail? Quarter-size hail or greater, which is 1 inch in diameter. That's the size of a hailstone that you need to be damaging or dangerous to people.
Jeff, I remember, 10, maybe it was more than 15 years ago at one of these AMS conferences where the broadcasters get together. The Mets back in the Midwest were complaining because at that point the severe level was 3/4 size. So if they thought there was going to be 3/4 size hail, that would be a severe thunderstorm. And they were like, why are we going on air or running crawls when this thunderstorm is producing hail that doesn't dent a car. I think the deal was it needs to be 1 inch or larger generally to dent a car or to cause damage to windows. And so the Weather Service changed that criteria. I don't know, maybe in the late 2000 aughts. Is that what it's called? Somewhere in there. But yeah, it used to be 3/4 inch hail.
Throughout my career, it's been quarter, but I believe you. And honestly, like if you're standing outside in penny-sized hail, it wouldn't feel good. So,
yeah,
I think like anywhere from 3/4 greater, you just want to be indoors. But again, we don't tend to see that kind of weather. Our air tends to be more stable because of our proximity to the Pacific Ocean. We have a lot of cool air coming in near the surface, so you don't have these huge differences in temperatures between the surface and maybe 10,000 feet up.
I remember in it was July, early July, first week of July, 1995. Only about 2 years into my career, a supercell thunderstorm developed. It actually tracked all the way from around Prineville all the way up to Hermiston. It survived going over the western edge of the Blue Mountains, and that dropped, I think, the 4-inch. I thought it was softball size. I thought it was 4-inch hail at Condon, broke out windows. And then when it got, I think it produced a weak tornado in Hermiston as well, moved out into the flatlands down along I-84 there. And it produced damaging hail there. And in Hermiston, that's, the Hermiston watermelons, that's a big thing. So the watermelons, were probably small, but it just decimated the watermelon crop because all that hail hit those developing little watermelons. But yeah, I think that maybe one or two other times I can remember in my career. That's it that I can remember a huge supercell storm producing big, like 3-inch, 2.5-inch or larger hail. Pretty rare here.
Central and Eastern Oregon is more rural, so I mean that tends to be where we see these stronger or severe thunderstorms develop, even supercell thunderstorms. I circled back to this how hail forms graphic because what we tend to see west of the Cascades, Mark, is a thunderstorm that forms that basically has an updraft on top of the downdraft, and it basically over like a 30-minute to hour-long time frame, it fizzles out. I mean, they don't last very long because the updraft and downdraft coincide and kill the thunderstorm. But what we tend to see in the Southern Plains, for instance, just as an example, is a tilted thunderstorm that has an updraft that's separated from the downdraft. So
it can survive much longer.
Exactly. It can go for hours at a time. It can cross state lines. Sometimes they can produce long-lived tornadoes. So we don't get that kind of wind shear that produces these tilted updrafts and thunderstorms, rather. Therefore, we don't see these massive thunderstorms typically.
I've been thinking for years that at some point, now that there's a huge population in Central Oregon, I mean, early in my career, there were, 30,000, 50,000 people in the middle of Central Oregon. Now there's like 150,000, but at some point there's going to be a supercell that crosses like Bend or Redmond or Prineville, and is going to impact a lot of population.
Yep. And we'll probably get more videos and photos of them because more people have cell phones out there now. So, on the subject of hail, I figured we would just bring this up one more time. It happens, at least once a year where we have to decipher between, is it hail? Is it Graupel? And the easiest way, I realized that some of the anchors on Good Day Oregon had no idea what Dippin' Dots were earlier in the season.
That's weird because Dippin' Dots were huge like 10 years ago, and now they seem to have lost their huge popularity.
Yeah, but if you're familiar with Dippin' Dots, that's the easiest way to understand what Graupel is. It's essentially snow with a rim of ice around it.
Right.
Versus hail, which forms typically in a different type of weather pattern. Sometimes it's all ice. I mean, there's no snow involved with that.
So Graupel, you're going to need a wintertime air mass, typically. I've never heard of Graupel in the warmer season like now. Here, at least.
All right.
Okay, it's holiday. You got a big holiday. You have big holiday weekend plans, Jeff? I forget. Are you off Monday?
I am off Monday.
Lucky dog.
Just taking another paternity leave day. Now, we'll be in town. Frankly...
You should come into work if you're going to be in town. Come and hang out.
Well, tell my wife that, who will be at work, and I got to watch my daughter. We're getting close, though. I think we found a nanny share that we might be taking advantage of in the next month or two, so that'll help open things up a little bit. But yeah, holiday weekend's coming up. I'm sure many of you are wondering, how's the weather going to play out? Coast into our valleys, up into the Cascades. So I figured we'd take some time to talk about that.
Let's do that.
All right. So this is the infrared satellite imagery this morning. And check that out, Mark. I got the loop.
Thank God. You got it moving.
Yeah. We're in between weather systems right now. You can see the upper level low pressure system that's developing basically over the interior Northwest and the Rockies. It's moving out of our region. Can you see my cursor?
Jeff, that one came, I can see your cursor there. That one came all the way down from the Yukon, like northern British Columbia. That could have been a snow producer for us if it was winter.
True.
Maybe. Yeah. Came straight south.
We're in between weather systems. You don't see anything over Oregon or Washington right now, but we do have a system approaching from the west. It's a fairly weak front, and that front is set to bring us some inclement weather Friday and Saturday. So this is a look at geopotential.
Oh, look at that, folks. If you were listening only, I hate to cut you off, Jeff, but if you were listening only, you are missing the animation of the 500 millibar heights. And the little cherry on top, that nobody really likes anyway, but the cherry on top, it's the Euro model. Look at that.
That's right. And it ain't even the ensemble. It's just the deterministic.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a look at upper level heights between Friday and Monday, just to give you an idea of what we're facing for the holiday weekend. The first half of the loop shows below normal heights, basically troughing occurring, weather system passing through. And then all of a sudden, Sunday into Monday, we have a ridge building in. Looks like it'll be a progressive ridge or a transient ridge that'll only, linger for a couple of days. But that is set to bring us some drier weather during the back half of the holiday weekend. We
don't mean that in a political sense. Progressive just means moving along in the weather sense. We're not promoting a certain agenda.
We did just have elections.
Just in case you wondered. By the way, that's a funny story. I come in on the election day, and I'm just wearing, I think I had a gray suit with a gray, kind of a monotone look. Didn't even think about it. And I come in and all the anchors are wearing purple. And I go, oh, is that what we've become now? You can't wear a red tie. You can't wear a blue tie. Oh, it's got to be purple now because somebody might infer. It was a gray tie.
Oh, it was a gray tie. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, gray tie, gray suit. So, but I thought that was just so funny that. Anyway, so when we say progressive, in the weather terminology, that just means things are kind of moving along.
Right.
That's how the term means.
Nothing is stalling.
Jeff isn't promoting some agenda.
No. All right. So I figured show 4 different snapshots. Friday, we have a trough right overhead. So expect, a gray, drippy, wet day, plenty of showers, light showers.
Tomorrow.
That's correct.
I'm going to be down at the City Fair, the opening of the Rose Fest. They bring out those massive gold scissors. I think they're gold. They're like 4 feet across, and they cut the ribbon. It's very exciting. Then the clowns start dancing around, and they all make their noises and stuff. And so I'll be down there tomorrow evening. I bet you wish you were there, Jeff. When your daughter gets a little bit older, we get the free rides for like 3 hours. See, your eyes. You heard free, and then all of a sudden your eyes just popped wide open. Yeah, they always have that first media night for a few hours, and you get free rides with the family. I've done that.
Well, I hope that things temporarily dry out while you're out there.
Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I just look closely at the NAM 3 kilometer, and it's like, it's some drips and.
Yeah, exactly.
The mood won't be so hot, but yeah. Okay.
So that's the upper level pattern. Friday, late afternoon, early evening. Saturday, maybe a few lingering showers, but high pressure is starting to build in. Sunday.
Oh, better.
Ridging overhead.
Better. Flat
Monday,
ridging. We call that dirty ridging sometimes, but kind of flattish ridging. But okay, heights are higher. Yeah.
Yep. And then
I like that.
Yep. Higher heights on.
This makes me a little nervous, but I haven't seen the precip forecast here yet. So, but okay, that was Monday. Oh,
yeah,
looks good.
So this is a look at just maybe what the radar will look like. A few snapshots here. Friday, Saturday are going to be the wettest days. Sunday, Monday, drier, mainly dry, in fact. And then Tuesday could have a return of some showers. It looks like timing should be Tuesday afternoon, evening, but that's not part of the holiday weekend forecast. So we don't need to worry about that just yet. This is how it looks at our 7-day forecast, updated as of this morning by yours truly.
Always.
Yep.
Good.
Low to mid 60s Friday and Saturday in the metro area. Low to mid 70s. Mark, Monday, if we get enough sunshine, there could be some spots that make a run at 80 degrees.
Okay.
On Memorial Day.
We'll check later.
Could work out. How about along the coast?
When I get in and do the forecast, we'll see if that's still an appropriate forecast.
Right. Don't go swimming in the Pacific Ocean, folks. It's going to be pretty chilly out there. Low to mid 50 sea surface temperatures.
Always.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Not unusual. Nothing too different along the coast. Of course, it'll be a little bit cooler, but Sunday and Monday should be the driest and best days with highs between the mid 50s and low 60s.
Uh,
Plan on dealing with some wet weather Friday, Saturday. What did I do?
I was going to say one thing to notice there is because of the ridging to our south, kind of flat ridging, and something's trying to approach from the north, especially Sunday, Monday, that we don't get the usual strong northwest wind on the beaches through the weekend. Really, it's the summer stable northwest wind is kind of suppressed for a few days. There you go.
This is going to be a fairly cool system for this time of year. So consider that we'll have precipitation around Friday into Saturday. It does look like as that system slides through, the snow level is going to start to dip down near the Cascade Passes again. We're not expecting many or any impacts just because we have strong sunshine this time of year. But it's possible we get maybe a little bit of a wintry mix at Government Camp with any showers early Saturday. I think most of the accumulation should occur above 4,000 feet, maybe another few inches of snow at Timberline. So that's the expectation for the holiday weekend. Let's get into the long-range forecast. Late May into early June. There are some strong hints that the western United States is going to be experiencing a more pronounced warm-up, maybe with a stronger ridge of high pressure building overhead. So this is the 8 to 14-day temperature outlook by the Climate Prediction Center, which is giving us a higher likelihood of above normal temperatures. Although the Pacific Northwest is going to be right on the edge. We might be in that Goldilocks zone, or, with showers potentially nearby, a bit more cloud cover. It's tough to say. Now, this is the Euro ensemble outlook for geopotential heights. And late May into early June, it's pretty clear that there's going to be a ridge of high pressure building over the West Coast. But are we going to be right on the western edge of that system, or will we be underneath it at any point?
Because that's the 0Z. Okay.
Right.
So I was thinking, I guess maybe one thing there is an absence of cold troughs.
That's
regardless
true.
of the amount of ridging we have or how flat it is, maybe a little more stable.
But what that tells me is if the ridge axis is just east of us, then we're going to be more predominantly under onshore flow. Influence.
True.
So little to no offshore flow potentially expected. That would be nice. Although offshore flow this time of year could really boost our temperatures, and I know a lot of people would be like,
we could hit 90 this time of year easy with east wind.
Totally. So these outlooks, the Euro and GFS temperature ensemble outlooks, tend to underdo it a little bit when we warm up. So if you look at the bottom of the screen there, you see late May into early June, first week of June. This does bump our temperatures back up into the low to mid 70s, but I think it's safe to assume that we'll be probably 5 degrees warmer than that at least.
So it looks like basically after after that dip kind of comes through the middle of next week, we may be on to a more stable summer pattern for a while. Summerish pattern.
I don't love that trough so close to us over the Eastern Pacific. That can create some havoc in the forecast. So this is the Euro ensemble temperature outlook. Look at how similar it is to the GFS temperature outlook, ensemble outlook.
Have you ever used the GFS downscaled? I find those temperatures are more reasonable.
No, but I should include that next podcast.
I'm going to order downscaled for next week's podcast.
Okay. I did want to just include 850 millibar temperatures. Late May into early June, if we see temperatures at 5,000 feet around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, that's more
pretty
like
warm.
80 to
get us into the 80s
degree weather. Yeah. And with any offshore flow, that would bump us to about 90 or so.
We should point out that the first of the 3 Rose Festival parades, the first one is on Saturday, the 1st. Is that the 1st? Why am I in? Oh yeah, it's the 1st. So we could be in a spell of good weather there, maybe.
That's true. I figure we would bring up the precipitation as well, and it's with that trough so close and the ridge maybe just to our east mark. Models in their ensembles are not totally in agreement as to how precipitation may play out.
I see some precipits in there.
I do too. It's
some juicy southwesterly flows mixed in there.
No, maybe. Exactly. Yeah, we might have some short waves coming around that trough that might bring scattered showers here and there. The late part of May and early part of June.
But that said, the end of next week, Friday, same here actually. Late next week, 31st, 1st, less than half the ensemble members have precip.
Exactly.
24-hour precip.
I would just stay tuned. I feel like we're probably going to have a warm up. That gives me strong hints that we're going to have a warm up to wrap up the month of May and to start June. But it may not be this 10 plus day stretch of dry weather either, because
Yeah. And it may not be hot either, which most
Exactly.
people wouldn't complain about.
Right.
Or, who knows, a week from now we may see the ridge shift slightly farther west and we hit 90. Who knows? But either
confidence will
way,
grow
a little
as we get
warmer.
closer. Yeah.
What was that?
Confidence is going to grow in the forecast as we get
Yes.
closer.
It bears watching.
Yep.
Not the bears are watching, but it bears watching.
Speaking of, man, we should have included that in the podcast.
What?
Bears.
Oh, yeah. We should include it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really quick, we'll hint at it. Mark has had a bear problem on his property.
Only once.
Is this the first time in
20 years we've had, I'm sorry. First time since we've had chickens and ducks, first time in 13 years. Yeah.
Okay. You have 30 seconds. Explain briefly what happened, Mark.
30 seconds go. Yeah. Basically I have an electric fence. And since that time we've had no killings of any of our poultry. And then one day last week, I hear my son text. He goes, "It's a massacre. Even all the chicks are dead." And basically a bear, I don't know why, had dug under the fence, under the electric fence and fenced area. He came in, got a chicken, 5 chicks. And then I wasn't home, so my wife tried to do something or whatever. And then the bear came back and got one more chicken and kind of ripped off the front door of the chicken coop, which I never anticipated a bear getting inside that area. So I've got more than 30 seconds. But
that's okay.
The point is, so then they say they do this in Alaska, works really well. One, I think my electric fence was off because a wire had come loose, which didn't help. But also they say this baiting technique, the electric line, I repaired it all yesterday, put some bacon, fresh bacon on it, which really smelled good while I was doing it. And so there's a few strips of bacon, and I got video. He or she came back, and boy, what a zap. You could even see the little spark, and that thing ran so fast. Doesn't hurt them. But I guess bears are pretty fearful, and they're like, "I'm not coming near that thing again." And since then, the bear has not returned. So I guess it's about training the bear. And it works in Alaska with the grizzlies. They keeps the bears away. So you got to train them. They got to touch the nose or the tongue to the electric fence, and then they say, "I'm not dealing with that. I'll find other sources of food."
Fairly humane solution. I'm glad that
yeah, I think so.
Authorities didn't have to get involved yet. I mean, you're still on bear watch, I would assume.
Yeah, I checked the video as soon as I got up this morning. There were no activations on the event list there, so that's good. But too bad. But you know what? You live with out in the woods, and that's going to happen.
Well, during my time here, I think just in the past few years, you've had a cougar and a bear roaming your property.
Yeah, and we closed up that area after that cougar walked by the backside of the garage. That's now closed by electric fence, and we've had no cougar or bobcats within our property now. They can have their area. I have my chickens. Everybody's happy.
I think next week, let's try to include like a video or at least an image of that bear. We can maybe go into more details, and maybe you'll have a follow-up if it did return or not. I'm sure our viewers would be interested to.
Oh, yeah, that bear did ride the white lightning, folks, let me tell you. It moved real quick after that spark.
All right, we're going to wrap up the podcast by showing a couple of viewer photos. We always appreciate you sending in your photos. Best ways to do that, news app, weather app. There are submission locations on both apps, or you can go to kptv.com/weather. You'll see a submit photos tab. We can use them once they're submitted on air, on the podcast, on social media. So thanks to William Jensen for sending in this shot, the sunrise out in the Dalles. It looks like a nice morning out there late last week, I believe. And Kathy out near Sisters sent this beautiful shot of some cows on a pasture and Mount Washington. Have you ever been out to or have you done much recreating out around Mount Washington?
We once camped at Big Lake, which is just north of Mount Washington, and it was right there. It was really pretty.
Nice. Yeah.
Beautiful out there. And the ponderosa pines, look at that. Perfectly framed.
Fun fact, I have my own ponderosa pine in the backyard. It should not be in Portland, but it is.
Oh, no, that's not true. There's a Willamette Valley ponderosa pine because I planted one out here. When I was getting the seed orders in at the seed place down in Brooks, you can go through the catalog, and it is native to the valley as well. But you know, the wetter trees prefer more. But there's kind of a Western Oregon ponderosa variety.
I didn't even think about that there may be a few different types of ponderosa pine. I figured there was just one.
So they're not non-native, but you're right, you don't see them as much.
Yeah, I tend to see them more in the drier climates, central and eastern Oregon. So thanks, Kathy, for sending that in. And yeah, we want to see your viewer photos. That's how we wrap up the podcast every week. So send them in if you see anything interesting out there. That's about it, Mark. Anything else to add?
I got nothing else to add. I gotta go take some quick exercise here since I got a dry morning, and that's it. So I'll be in later this afternoon and see if anything has changed in the forecast. I don't think so. I'm sure, Jeff. It's always nice following you because I feel confident. Like, Jeff knows what he's doing, So
thank you, Mark.
you take great care in your forecast. You don't just slam it together like I do sometimes.
Well, everybody enjoy your holiday weekend. At least we will have probably a couple of dry days, but we're probably going to have to wait until late May and early June to see a bigger warm up, and I'm sure we'll have more confidence on that part of the forecast next week in the next episode of the Fox 12 Weather Podcast. So have a great holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
You're waiting and hesitating, and tell us, please tell us.